Hey everyone, welcome to the Be Bold, Make Waves podcast, a show bringing you inspiring stories of women who are growing and scaling their business. I'm your host, Laura Comark, a website and tech integration specialist who works with online business owners who love their work and not their website. Join me as we have incredible conversations about business, mindset, productivity, and of course, the website and tech behind the business. Let's go ahead and dive in to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's show. For those of you who don't already know me, I'm Laura Comark, website and tech integration specialist for women who love their work, but not their tech. I'm so incredibly excited to introduce our guest today, Jennifer McNeil Lozano, Esquire. Jennifer is the founder of McNeil Lozano Law, PC, and practices in the areas of estate planning, probate, and trust administration, and general business advice and consultation. Jennifer earned her Juris Doctorate degree from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles, in 2008. During her law school career, Jennifer worked full-time in legal affairs at 20th Century Fox Film, drafting contracts for cast, stunt, puppeteers, dancers, and post-production players. After the birth of her first son, she launched her own law practice. In 2012, she founded McNeil Lozano Law, specializing in estate planning, providing peace of mind to other growing families. Her practice has expanded to representing clients in the creative space, high net worth families, and business owners. So, Jennifer, I am so incredibly excited to invite you onto the podcast. This is so fun for me. So to let our audience know just a little background, Jennifer and I know each other in real life. She's actually like my husband's like best friend from, junior high, I think.
Yes, we were young.
So I'm super stoked to have you on the show today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what it was like when you first went off on your own and started your business?
Well, honestly, it was a little frightening because I was in entertainment for so long. Prior to Fox, I was at Sony Music, and I always thought I would be in the entertainment realm, and it becomes part of your identity. And when you leave, you lose a little bit of that, and also becoming a new mother, you are trying to find yourself again. So, and I never really had anyone to kind of be a mentor, if you will, and like show me a path. So I was finding my own way at that point when I literally left when my son was 4 months old, and just went for it. It was just one foot in front of another, and it started very organically, where I was naturally doing entertainment before. So I was like, okay, I'll take on some entertainment clients. And I kind of explored different areas of law. And after a few years, I realized that I wanted to try estate planning. I was around a lot of young families who for the first time were thinking responsibly, like, God forbid something happens, what my kids. And I did that for a friend, and it kind of took off from there.
I love that. So we're going to talk a lot about that today because I will tell you, and I don't know if you know this, but my husband and I do not have a will. And so I want to kind of take advantage.
Have to talk to you guys about that.
I'm going to take advantage of you being on the show today and ask you a whole bunch of questions about this. And so our audience, who might also be in the same position as I am. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to kind of dive into some of these questions I have for you.
I'm ready.
Okay. So in my personal situation, like, we don't own a home, we rent. So for me, it was always kind of like, what do we need a will for? Then we had children. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure we need to have a will just in case something were to happen. Can you kind of speak on this at all? Like your thoughts on this?
Yes. Well, that kind of dives right into the difference between a will and a trust, because when I advise people, a will for you, for example, the most important part of the will is that in your will, you nominate guardians for your children. Okay. And that's the most important part. But because of the fact that you have minors, and they have many years until they're going to be an adult. God forbid something happens to you. You don't want anything nothing can transfer to them until they're an adult. So oftentimes I'll tell, if you have real property or you have minor children, I definitely recommend a trust for that reason, because a trust, you're able to design and hold those assets for them until certain ages that you want them to have those distributions. And that is the difference between a will and a trust. If you had a will, yes, you're able to nominate who you want to be your representative. If you should pass, you're able to say where you want your assets to flow. You're able to nominate guardians for your kids, but that will has to be probated. So it needs to be lodged with the court. And then there would be a probate, which is basically a court supervised process where the court ensures that your wishes as drafted in that will comes to pass. In California, unfortunately, our probate process is very lengthy and very costly. So when you talk about cost, it's a statutory basis. It's like a sliding scale, but it goes by your gross estate. So a lot of times people say, oh, well, I have this mortgage on this property. It's $800,000, even though the property is maybe $1 million, for example. Your statutory fees go off of the gross. It doesn't matter about the loans. And so that's another reason why it's nice to have the trust, where you are able to specifically say how the administrator, because the administrator and the attorney gets paid on a probated will, for example. But yeah, that goes into the whole other conversation regarding a trust, where a trust is more private. You're able to, first of all, nominate who you want to be your trustee, who would step into your shoes. You'd be able to, similarly, like a will, state how you want your assets to flow. But you're also able to plan for incapacity. So you'd be able to bypass any need for any potential conservatorship. So at any time that you become incapacitated, disabled, unable to manage your assets, your trustee would step into your shoes and be able to do that for you. And your trust does not get lodged with the court. It's a private matter. So that's one issue when we talk about privacy or the public nature. Anything that's lodged with the court is public record. So if you lodge your will with the court, anybody would ultimately be able to see, who the beneficiaries are, potentially target them, unscrupulous people. And unfortunately, a lot of them tend to get a lot of spam mail and phone calls and the like. And that's why even I have clients who, as we're going through a probate process, they'll contact me and they realize the importance and want to get their estate planning kind of put together.
Oh. Okay, that was a lot of information.
I know, that's why I can see it in your eyes. But yeah, okay, as you dissect it, then ask me questions. I'll let you go. Okay, go.
So in terms of, how does this kind of vary from state to state? What are the things that kind of are there certain, I guess, let me rephrase this. Are there certain things that across, like in the United States, across all states where it's kind of the same, or is it every state has their sort of different things going on?
Okay, so the trust is federal law. Yes, it's federally usually acknowledged in every state. I draft language that you want to ensure that that all of your documents are able to be effective in any state. However, there's always situs meaning which law you're choosing as the law of your documents. However, all the ancillary documents, when I talk about ancillary documents, when I talk about foundational plan, your trust, I usually say, is like the meat, the core. And then you have your ancillary documents that support it, like your will, your power of attorney, all of those other documents, your advanced healthcare directive. Every state has different requirements. For example, like on your will in California, all is not notarized. It's actually, you need 2 disinterested witnesses. In some states, it actually requires a notary. And if it doesn't go by the proper requirements of each state, then it's not a valid will. So that's why anytime a client actually moves to another state, I just want another attorney in that state to just look over the documents and make sure that maybe they need to update their ancillary documents, but their trust usually would remain.
Oh, that's fascinating. So, because I am married, my husband and I, is there anything that he like California is a community property state. I know that. I don't necessarily know
You know what
exactly
that means?
what that means. I just know that it's a community property estate. But in terms of like, if we don't have anything in place, because he's my husband, is there some stuff that automatically goes to him because it's community property? Or
Well, when you don't have anything in place, I always say that there's three types of plans. There's no plan, there's a will-based plan, and a trust-based plan. And having no plan, like you have right now, means that everything would go by intestacy, okay? And intestacy is pursuant to the probate code. So you'd look to the probate code. California created the probate code to ultimately guide who has who has the right to be appointed as your administrator of your estate, who has the right to potentially be a guardian, who your assets would flow to. So when you're married, yes, all of your assets, when you talk about community property, that means that anything that's marital property between you and Stefan, half is yours, and half is Stefan's. So theoretically, you could gift your half to someone, but you couldn't gift more than that because half is Stefan's. Then there's also separate property, and separate property being anything that you potentially started. Maybe you had a business or you had assets prior to marriage. As long as you don't commingle them and it's clear that those are separate property assets and you don't transmute them by commingling them, by paying mortgage or buying a property together or having a car, you have to make sure that you strategize and plan for those assets to stay separate, for them to remain separate. And so, go back to, what was the question?
community property, since we have currently nothing in place, which will be changing, but
so you would
we're like 30 minutes into this call. I know I need to make some changes. I knew that before we got on the call.
Well, and especially when you want to ensure if there's certain people that you don't want to inherit, because intestacy law ultimately has that hierarchy. Ultimately, because the fact that both of you are married and you have two kids, it would initially go to each other. And because you have shared children and you don't have any prior children, it would then flow to your kids. If both of you guys, where's the wood? If something happened to your whole family, like you're on a trip or something like that, where it would flow, then goes to both of your parents. And that's one consideration where you would want to plan, because maybe you don't want it to go in that direction. So, that's a conversation.
That is a conversation. Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is a lot. So we're going to dial it back a little.
Okay.
Because it's all fascinating. I mean, what would you say when clients come to you? Are you from a percentage place? Are people mostly we have no plan, or we have a will, or we have where do people normally come to you? When's a good time for someone to come to you?
Well, I think it's half and half. I have a lot of people that, don't have anything in place. And a lot of times people come to me after they've dealt with a situation, as I said, like my client who's going through a probate, and they see how much of a time and stress it causes to the family, and they want to get their things in order. And sadly, because of COVID, it's really brought home the planning aspects for a lot of people, and they've come to me. The other half is and to the question about when, oftentimes when you're purchasing a new home, my realtor colleagues will be like, you can't have this just in your name alone. This would open it up to a probate, because a lot of times you can actually, for example, you guys don't own a property right now. You have accounts. You could potentially just put each other as the beneficiary on the account, and then put someone else as contingent. But similarly, you probably want your children to be contingent and no asset can flow to them. So if you happen to do something like that, it's not proper planning, because ultimately someone would still have to petition the court and get a guardian of an estate established for your children, in addition to a guardian of their person. It's like two different petitions. And you can see the complexities that are involved. If you had a trust where everything just flowed to a trust, and whoever you nominated potentially one of your parents, for example, as the trustee, they would be able to manage the whole thing outside of the court system and kind of create a little bit more peace within the family. And the other half are people who have had a plan in place, and because of tax law changes or, changes in their family or changes in their asset situation, they need to kind of revisit it. I always say it's not like a one and done thing, because I always say plan for now. Because people are like, well, I don't know, this is going to change. I mean, people come back and they'll amend because maybe someone passed away that they nominated as a fiduciary, or that they don't want to, sadly, gift to one of their beneficiaries anymore, because that relationship has dissolved in one way or another, or actually changing distributions. Okay. Like for your example, for your girls, sometimes people would have like distributions at like, ultimately you can always have, discretionary distributions. Whoever you nominate as your trustee can ultimately pay if they have health issues or like for education and those kind of things. But if you want them to have a right of a withdrawal, people will do like 30, 35, and 40, for example. Those are kind of a common age range that people will say that they like. People come back and, as the kids get older, then like make it 40, 45, and 50. Or they say, no, I just want it to be outright. I don't want to, rule from the grave, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, it varies and it depends. And the thing is that it's always whenever there's a change in your family, a change in your life. I mean, a lot of times also, while whatever plan you guys put in place while your kids are young, you'll probably change once they're an adult, because you probably want to put them as your fiduciaries, people who would make decisions for you. Or when you have grandchildren, maybe you also want to provide for the grandchildren, and you just want to, everything. When life changes, so does your plan. I always say it lives and breathes with you. It's an extension of you.
I love that. Oh my goodness, Jen, this is like so informative.
It's a lot. I know. See, for me, I'm like living and breathing it all the time. So yeah, please slow me down if I'm getting
No, you're doing, I love this. This is great. It's so helpful. I mean, honestly, like I know it's been one of those things that's been on the list. Let's see, we got married 8.5 years ago. So it's been on the list for about 8.5 years. Because I knew that we needed to do, actually, it probably happened around the time I found out I was pregnant, but which was, 8 years. Just about a month after that wedding. So it's something that I know we've been needing to do. And I know I'm not the only one. I have plenty of friends that I've talked to, and they also, it's like something like kind of, I know I need to do something about it. Maybe they don't know who to go to. Maybe they don't know what questions to ask. I know there's different things we've looked for, like different sorts of professionals, and you don't always know the right name for what it is for who's going to help you, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
For planning these sort of things.
Yeah. I mean, I have oftentimes, people come with the problem, and then that's where I figure out what it is that you need. Like, why are you coming to me? What's your concern? And then you figure out like, okay, I think this would be appropriate. I mean, there are certain clients that a trust-based plan is not appropriate for them. I mean, they're not married. They don't have any kids, and they don't own any real property, and they have all of these accounts. So theoretically you can do a will that kind of covers everything, and you just do the beneficiaries. So, or they come to me wondering how to protect something later, and maybe you need a postnuptial agreement, or, or it's, as we were talking before about, like entities,
Mm-hmm.
and actually transferring those entities and just making the connection to the right advisor for them.
Oh, and I'm going to ask you that question here that I'd asked you before we went live on the call, because I really liked your answer to it, because it wasn't something that I knew the answer to. And my question was to see, like, are you the person I would talk to about, does it make sense for me to become an LLC or an S Corp or anything like that? Because I currently am a sole prop.
Right. And I said, you need to talk to your CPA. So we need to get you a good CPA. You need to talk to your CPA because they need to examine your tax return and see what kind of income you're generating, what kind of expenses, and see if it makes sense for you to go that route. I mean, like, I'm an S Corp and it makes sense for me. And I think for you, it might be, but it's definitely a bigger picture to examine everything and make the decision. And also it depends on what kind of business you are. because, if you were going to be an LLC, for example, and you were, going to be selling some of your shares. I mean, it depends upon what kind of business and what kind of structure and what's your real trajectory in the next, in the future.
And I love that because we have a new CPA we're going to start working with this next year.
Good.
So I'm excited. It's helpful for me to know that's one of the questions I need to add to my
I always need good
list.
CPAs, so send me that.
I will. I'll send you that. Okay. I want to go back and talk a little bit more about your journey because this time just flew by. As I knew it would because I could talk to you all day long. But I want to talk a little bit more about your business and what your journey has been like. You've been juggling raising a family, raising two very active boys, your husband. You guys have had some moving recently going on, bouncing around. And you're now closer to us, which I love.
Yay.
Can we just talk has your business always looked like it does today? I know you mentioned that where you figured out that this was the type of law you wanted to do. How has your business kind of grown and changed since you made that decision?
I think definitely once I decided on a niche, it really helped it blossom because you can kind of hone in on the education of what it is that you need to focus on, and also how you're marketing yourself, the certain contacts and referral sources that are going to be best for you. I mean, this kind of goes along any business, really of just honing in and no, I mean, my business has grown to a point where, my husband now works for my firm. He's the COO, and we have another associate. We have a paralegal. I recently have a general, counsel to do more business and potentially any sort of pre-litigation mediation type services. So we're growing, and it's just definitely something where you just stay consistent and also courageous, because I think that as you go on, I mean, early on when I decided on the niche, I was very much estate planning because it was around young families. And then it was just learning some of these other areas like probate and trust administration. I think when I started learning about trust administration, it really helped my estate planning because you learn about the backside of once actually someone passes away and what's important and what could be missed. And it kind of just has bolstered, I think, in terms of confidence in what you do and what value you bring to your clients. And I think that, translates when you're servicing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that you've had what would you say is a big challenge that you faced in your business? Maybe some mindset challenges that you've had to overcome to get where you are today?
I think, it might sound weird, but getting out of the matrix of what you might think, what it needs to look like, mm-hmm. and creating my own way of doing business and what my days can look like, and that the freedom that comes with that. And what a big part of that is scheduling, block scheduling. I really fought that for a really long time. And I find that block scheduling opens up my day in new ways. I can create the day how I want to and still have a very productive day and and be responsive to my clients. And there are no hard and fast rules. That's one thing, it's not like you have to work 9 to 5 or, you shouldn't work in the evenings or whatever. It's like whatever works for you and your family. And it's about keeping, just being true to myself in every moment and what I might need, and creating some of those practices. In addition to the scheduling, I mean, you got to take care of yourself. Whatever makes you happy, and also the journaling, meditation, and constant learning. And I think when I do that, I feel good and I'm able to provide the best service. If you start releasing or you're getting lazy on some of those things, it comes through. And then you're not able to be the best for your kids and your spouse and your family, everybody. So
yeah, I feel like I just finally hit a place in life, really just this last 6 months where The kids are finally at the point, like they just both started, like they're both in elementary school now. And I finally, I mean, that's really new. But even before that, I've just so much of the last 7 years has been like in service of the children and making sure like they're taken care of and everything's handled and just being constantly go, go, go. And I wasn't able to find a lot of pockets of time to like take myself, go hiking. Like on my vision board this year, I literally put a hiking trail. I'm like, I just want to be outside and go hiking. And it was interesting too, because I was like, oh, I finally am going to have more time once they're both in school. I can go join a gym. And I got in touch with all these different gyms and was trying to like find something. I'm like, none of this felt right. And then I realized I don't want to go to the gym. I want to go outside and be with my dog and go hiking or go for, just started running again. We were talking about this before we hit record. I just, you see it on my stories. I started running with the dog because I just want to be outside. We're in Southern California. The weather's amazing, like, 99% of the time. I just want to be outside. I don't want to be inside a gym, and that's okay.
Right. Yes. No, it's actually enjoying all those little moments and being present in those moments to enjoy them. And I think that, sometimes I think a big challenge is, I was saying, social media. Like I really feel like you can just get sucked in and really setting those boundaries with yourself, setting those boundaries with people around you, and setting those boundaries even with your clients too. They can get really demanding as well. And knowing that once you set the boundaries, you don't have to feel guilty about anything with anybody. So that's been really helpful too.
I've gotten really good over the years with setting boundaries with clients. It was something that I didn't realize I was really good at, but I think it's because I had so many limitations with the kids being home so much, especially during lockdown and all those things where I had like retainer clients at that time where I was like, these are the days I'm able to work on your stuff. Sometimes I'm up at 4 a.m. That doesn't mean I'm always available at 4 a.m. I had one client, she's like, I know if you're emailing me at 4, it means your child woke you up and you weren't able to get back to sleep.
You're like, yeah, so don't talk to me.
She just mentioned it later, but she's like, oh, your daughter must have woken you up. I'm like, yeah, she did. But yeah, it's been really interesting. Just seeing how putting strong boundaries in place with clients has made it. I have some of the most amazing clients ever, and they're so respectful of my boundaries. And it's something that I didn't realize I was really good at until I was talking with other people who weren't maybe not as strong with their boundaries with clients. And it was really interesting to me. I'm like, what do you mean they're texting you? No one texts me. I don't, they don't have my number.
I'm curious, you set them out literally at the inception of the relationship, or is it from your actions that they're able to understand your boundaries?
I think it's usually at inception. I'm pretty good at saying like, this is how we communicate. This is, I typically no one ever has my phone number. I do have some clients that have some different access to me. And I know I have one client, she's like, sorry, I don't want to abuse that. We have this other channel that we use. I'm like, I actually prefer it because emailing sometimes takes me a little longer because there's like all the niceties that go into it. And you have to like be extra pleasant, like, oh, hi, good morning. How are you? Like all this stuff that sometimes it's just a quick question. She has a quick question. She sends me through this other channel. I'm like, it's okay. It doesn't bother me because I don't feel that you abuse it. So it doesn't, for whatever reason, I don't know why she and I have, but that's the relationship we do. I have another client that we're also really good friends. And because a lot of my clients become my really good friends, and we talk daily on Voxer because that's our communication just on a friend level. But then if she has something work related, she's not going to email me about it. She's going, hey, quick question for you. And it's not a big deal because again, it doesn't feel in that sense like it's over any boundary because that's our normal form of communication.
Right.
So it's kind of
I think that makes it difficult when you guys become friends, when you're friends with clients. But
my clients, we spend like a lot of time together because I start out with building like a website for them. And then we get, okay, now we're ready to do more scaling. Let's put in some back-end automations and some email stuff going on. And then it continues to grow and we keep the relationship going, which I love because I love working with my clients over and over again and watching their businesses grow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, we have had such a fantastic conversation. We do need to schedule lunch because that's been on my to-do list also to text you so we can get together for lunch now that you're so much closer. But I have one question that I ask everyone who comes on the podcast.
Yes.
And that is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone when they are growing and scaling their business to help them be bolder, be louder, and make waves?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say constantly learning, constantly growing, and constantly being courageous. And yeah, I mean, as long as you do that, you're moving forward. And I think that's the biggest thing. We're dealing with such heaviness in the world right now, and that through it, you can still move forward, and you're going to look back and see that you're just an extraordinary place by being courageous and continuing to grow, and don't let anything stop you, really.
I love that so much. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you tell our listeners where they can come find you, hang out with you, if they're in California, where they can come talk to you?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's like so weird to be talking to you for this format, but it's cool. Yes, they can find me at McNeilLozanoLaw.com. Give me a call. If you have any questions, you can also email me. Happy to answer any questions. Jennifer at McNeil Lozano Law, and that's McNeilLozanoLaw.com.
Wonderful. I will link all that up in the show notes. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to check out the show notes at lauracomark.com/podcast. And if you're ready to turn your website into a marketing machine, get more sales, save time, and simplify the back end of your business, grab my free resource, Power Integrations for your website. Head on over to lauracomark.com/power. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe. And also, I'll just love you forever if you leave me a review. It helps get this podcast in front of other people that can help inspire. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye now.